All right, so we're given this equation 2x squared plus 16 x minus 8 equals 0. And we're asked to solve it. Now today, because this is the quadratic formula, we're going to use a thing called the quadratic formula. All right. But before I do that, I look at this thing and I notice that everything is divisible by 2. So I'm going to divide this by 2, divide this by 2, divide this by 2, and divide this by 2. And so I get x squared plus 8x minus 4 is equal to 0, right? 2 divided by 2 is 1 times x squared is x squared. 16 divided by 2 is 8. So that becomes 16x becomes 8x. And then 8 divided by 2 becomes negative 4. And 0 divided by 2 becomes 0. So now with that being said, remember that our quadratics written in standard form look like this. Ax squared plus bx plus c. And that's important because a then, according to this form, a then would equal 1. There isn't a 1 listed here in front of the x. It's implied, but there's 1x squared. So we normally don't write it down, but the coefficient of x squared is 1. Now for b, it's 8. So b is always the number in front of the x to the first power. A is always the number, whether it's written down or not, in front of x squared. And then c is always the constant. So now, why do I need those values? Because the quadratic formula solves the equation by saying negative b plus or minus the square root of b squared minus 4 times ac all over 2 times a. What? So what I'm going to do, and there's going to be 2 answers because we got this plus or minus, but basically if you take this equation and you complete the square and you solve for x, you'll get the quadratic formula. So this right here is what we call the quadratic formula. It will work on any quadratic and it'll give you a number or a solution, whether it's real or complex. So this is called the quadratic formula. When you're doing your work, I encourage you to write down the formula every time. It's a great way to memorize it. We're going to do a bunch of problems. If you write down the formula every time, by the time we finish this lesson, you should be, you should memorize the formula. So anyways, the formula is minus b. So I've got minus a plus or minus the square root of b squared, which is 8 squared, minus 4 times a, which is 1, times c, which is negative 4, all over 2 times a, which is 2 over 1. Next up, negative 8 plus or minus. So now this becomes 64. And negative 4 times 1 is negative 4. Negative 4 times negative 4, this becomes a positive 16. So I believe that's the square root of 80. Okay? All over 2. Okay? So this is going to have lots of parts to it. The square root of 80, remember, and this is all the value of x, right? So remember that could be reduced. So I'm going to go up here, find a little space, and see if I can reduce the square root of 80. So the square root of 80 is the same as, I think 16 goes into it 5 times. Let's see. So remember when we reduce a radical, what we do is we try to find a perfect square that goes into it. Now 16 is 4 squared, so I want to see if 80 is divisible by 16. I think it does it 5 times. Yep. So then this can be rewritten as the square root of 16 times the square root of 5, right? Because 16 times 5 equals 80. So then the square root of 80 reduces down to the square root of 16, which is 4 root 5. So then this becomes negative 8 plus or minus 4 root 5 all over 2. So now another thing that we could do to simplify this even more is I could say negative 8 divided by 2 plus or minus 4 over 2 square root 5. Now I did that on purpose because what that allows me to do is I can simplify this final answer, right? So whenever I have two things over a denominator, I can split them apart and put the denominator under each term. So then 8 divided by 2, or negative 8 divided by 2 is negative 4. And then 4, that's plus or minus, 4 divided by 2 is just 2. And we tack on the root 5. And that is our solution. That's it.